Hey there. Tonight, we're stepping into a time that's a bit grittier. A world of plagues, harsh laws, and humble meals. This isn't the fairy tale Middle Ages with shiny armor and noble quests. No, this is the real deal. Raw, rough, and downright bizarre at times. Honestly, most of us wouldn't survive a single day. So before we dive in, if you find these late-night historical journeys soothing or fascinating, go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you haven't yet, only if it feels right to you. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? What time is it on your side of the world? I always find that part magical. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and maybe let a fan hum softly in the background. Let's take a deep breath and drift into a different century together. A day begins in medieval stillness. Imagine the chill of a damp morning in the year 1325. Your eyes blink open in a one-room wooden hut, its roof sagging with straw, the air thick with the mingled scent of earth, goat, and lingering ash. There's no alarm clock, only the slow clang of a distant bell echoing from the village chapel, your wake-up call. You're not alone. Beside you, your family stirs. 3, maybe 4 people sharing the same straw-stuffed bed. On the floor, a few chickens scratch. A sheep coughs softly in its sleep. And through a crack in the wooden wall, the cold leaks in like a whisper. You stretch cautiously. Your joints creak, your back stiff from a lifetime of hard beds and harder labor. At 22, you're already middle-aged. The wool blanket wrapped around you is heavy with winter's dirt, yet strangely comforting. You pull it tighter for one last moment before the day begins. The floor beneath your bare feet is cold, damp from last night's rain, or perhaps something else. You tiptoe through shadows to start the morning. There's no light switch here, only the golden sliver of sunrise slipping in through a gap in the door. You slip into the same tunic you've worn for seasons. It smells faintly of smoke and sweat, the scent of survival. Outside, the world awakens slowly. A rooster calls. A dog barks in the distance. Somewhere, a neighbor coughs deeply. Another life beginning, just like yours. And just like that, your medieval day begins, quietly, humbly, and utterly without haste. The shared ritual of morning needs. The sun is barely up, but your body already knows what it needs. And in medieval Europe, that need becomes a ritual, a quiet, uncomfortable one. There is no bathroom door to close, no faucet to run, no sweet-smelling soap to soften the moment. There is only the earth, a wooden bucket, and the practiced patience of someone who has done this 1,000 times before. You step quietly behind the hut, the ground still wet with night's memory. A chill lingers in the air. The wooden bucket is cold to the touch, used by others before you, and likely to be used again. Its smell is old, deep, settled like dust in the corners of your world. You do not rush. You do not speak. This is not a place for words. The path to cleanliness is vague here. Perhaps some straw or a rag rinsed in river water. There is no soap, no towel, only the morning wind and the faint scent of burning wood nearby. And then it's done. A small, daily discomfort. A private act in a world without privacy. Your footsteps return to the doorway, where the day is waiting for you to enter again. Pottage, ale, and the harsh breakfast. You sit near the hearth, where the fire is faint but familiar. Your stomach stirs, not with hunger, but with habit. There is no plate, no tablecloth, no silver spoon, just a rough wooden bowl, passed down through generations, its edges worn smooth by time and repetition. Inside, something warm. A thick stew, pottage they call it. It's not fresh. It's not seasoned. It's simply there. Bits of barley, turnip, some days a bean, and sometimes only water and salt. You eat not for pleasure, but to quiet the emptiness in your belly. Beside it, a piece of bread, dense, dark, nearly stone-like, baked from rye and coarse flour, sometimes mixed with bark or powdered acorns. You chew slowly, not because you savor, but because your jaw demands the time. And to drink ale, even for a child, weak, warm, and cloudy, but safer than water. It's the only liquid that doesn't bite back. There is no scent of coffee, no fruit on the table, no morning laughter, just silence and steam, and the soft sounds of chewing beneath a gray sky. Dressing in the itch of survival. The fire fades. It's time to clothe your body for the day ahead. Not in choice, not in style, but in what little you have. Your tunic lies nearby, woolen, heavy, stained by time and toil. It has no color anymore, just the softened brown of earth and ash. You lift it slowly. It resists your touch, stiff from dried sweat and unwashed weeks. There's no change of clothes, no wardrobe. This one piece is your armor and your blanket, your skin and your shelter. You pull it over your body. It scratches. The seams rub your skin raw, but you say nothing. No one says anything. Underneath, perhaps a linen shift. If you're lucky. If not, your skin meets the wool directly, and the fleas come with it. Shoes. Perhaps a pair, hand-stitched from cracked leather, but more likely, bare feet, calloused and cracked, meeting the wet morning soil like old friends. You do not dress for comfort. You dress for survival. And every layer is a reminder. This world is not made for softness. Smiles lost to time, dental realities. The chill air bites at your teeth as you breathe. But that bite is nothing compared to the one already inside your mouth. You haven't brushed your teeth because there is nothing to brush with. No paste, no bristles, just habit or sometimes a twig. You run your tongue over the jagged edges inside. Some teeth are missing. Others ache, quietly, persistently, as if mourning their own decay. By your 20s, the rot has set in. Tiny black pits where bread met bone. Swollen gums, bitter breath, and a throbbing that never quite sleeps. There are no dentists, only a barber, who may pull a tooth as easily as trim a beard. No anesthesia, just the sound of iron against enamel and a prayer. You learn not to smile, not because you're sad, but because smiles reveal pain. And in a world where survival means hiding weakness, a broken tooth is not just discomfort, it's danger. So you chew carefully, you speak slowly, and you hope that today will not be the day your tooth finally turns against you. Labor from dawn to dusk. The sun is barely above the trees. Already, your body is in motion. There are no alarms. But your bones, they know. They rise when the sky turns gray-blue. Because the land waits for no one. You walk barefoot to the field. In your hands, a wooden hoe. Your spine is sore before you begin. Your fingers blister before the day has warmed. The work is simple. Dig, pull, carry, repeat. And yet, each motion feels eternal. You do not pause to think. You do not dream of escape. You just keep going. Because there is no alternative. Your stomach grumbles. Your back bends. And still, you continue. Not for wealth, not for rest, but to eat tonight. To survive another day. The wind picks up. Dust rises. You wipe your forehead and taste the salt of your own exhaustion. There is no weekend, no reward, just rhythm, and the whisper of breath as you carry on, until the light fades again, and you follow it home, the sky above and the chill within. In the Middle Ages, the weather was not just a backdrop to your day. It was an active force, shaping how you lived, worked, and slept. Winters were long, damp, and bone-deep cold. Without insulation or firewood in plenty, you wrapped yourself in your one-wool tunic and curled close to the dying embers of last night's fire. The walls around you were made of wood and straw, and the gaps between the boards let in more than just a draft. You could hear the wind whispering through them, sometimes sounding like voices, sometimes like warnings. Your breath hung in the air as you stirred from sleep, and your fingers ached from the chill before you even moved. There was no such thing as central heat. Firewood was expensive, often illegal to gather without the Lord's permission. So you shivered and hoped your body would warm itself with work. And then came summer. Not a comfort, but another kind of hardship. The air inside your hut became thick and stifling. Sweat soaked your only clothes, but you couldn't shed layers. Exposing skin was frowned upon, and left you vulnerable to bites, burns, and judgment. Flies buzzed around you constantly, drawn to the heat, the livestock, and the lack of bathing. Mosquitoes sang you to sleep, if sleep ever came at all. There were no fans, no breezes, only sweat and stillness. The seasons didn't offer relief. They simply changed the flavor of your suffering. Whether frostbitten or sunburnt, soaked or swarmed, the sky did not listen. You endured it, like you endured everything else. The water that betrays. In the medieval world, water was both a necessity and a silent threat. It flowed in streams and wells, through wooden buckets and stone troughs. It bathed your hands before meals, washed your face on rare mornings, and brewed the ale you drank daily. But the water that touched your lips could turn on you without warning. There were no modern purification systems. Wells were dug wherever the soil allowed, often too close to where waste was thrown. Rain might wash the filth deeper into the ground, mixing with what you drank. Even the rivers, which looked clear under the morning sun, carried the hidden weight of disease, human waste, dead animals, and the runoff of life all merged unseen. People learned to be cautious. Water was rarely drunk plain. Instead, it was boiled into broth or ale, its dangers muted by heat or alcohol. Still, even then, stomach cramps and fevers were common. Dysentery was not a word most peasants knew, but they knew what it meant to lose someone to the loosening, to watch a child waste away from what began as a sip of water. Children were especially vulnerable. Their small bodies couldn't fight off what hid in a single mouthful. And so, mothers learned to fear the same wells they once drew from with ease. They listened to stories of cursed springs and foul spirits, not knowing the real enemy was much smaller and far more silent. In a place where every breath of life depended on water, trusting it became the greatest risk of all. If illness found you in the Middle Ages, your survival depended less on treatment and more on luck or divine mercy. Medicine was not a science, but a belief system built on observation, superstition, and tradition. Doctors were few, and most were trained in texts written centuries earlier, guided more by humors and holy texts than by any understanding of germs or anatomy. When you fell ill, you might first be told to pray. Illness was often seen as punishment, either from sin or from unseen spiritual forces. If prayer didn't ease your suffering, then came the treatments. Bleeding was common, veins cut with crude blades, your blood collected in clay bowls, in the hope that whatever badness was inside would drain out with it. If not blood, then leeches, or crushed herbs, boiled in wine. Sometimes, dried toads were pressed to your skin, or urine was tasted to detect imbalance. A toothache might be blamed on a worm living inside the tooth. Cures varied, from incense smoke to red-hot iron. And yet, not all was blind guesswork. Midwives and herbalists, often women, held quiet knowledge passed down through generations. They knew which plants could ease pain, which roots calmed fever. But such wisdom was often feared, and many healers found themselves accused of witchcraft, punished for their gifts. Hospitals did exist, mostly run by monasteries. They were quiet. Humble places meant more for comfort than cure. You were given a bed, perhaps some broth, and space to die in peace. To be sick in the Middle Ages was to walk a fine line between faith and fear, between being healed and being blamed. In a medieval household, food was not taken for granted. It was earned, hoarded, preserved, and, when fortune allowed, shared. A warm meal could lift spirits, but it could also carry unseen dangers. There were no fridges, no expiration dates. Preservation was artful guesswork, drying, salting, smoking. And even then, raw was a constant shadow. Your daily fare was humble. Bread, pottage, cabbage, perhaps a sliver of salted meat. On special days, you might receive fish or cheese, often past its prime. The bread itself was dense and gritty. Bakers used flour mixed with ground seeds, or even chalk to stretch their supply. Over time, this wore away teeth. Some peasants bore mouths of broken enamel by the age of 25. Food was sacred in its own way. Meals often began with prayer, not out of ritual alone, but to summon protection from what lay within. Spoiled meat could cause stomach cramping or worse, but you ate it anyway. There were no alternatives. Hunger always won. In wealthier homes, feasts meant variety, but not always safety. Rich sauces covered spoiled flavors, and spices masked decay. The dangers of food were democratic. Disease didn't care for class. Festivals brought roasted meats, sweetmeats, and mead, but these were rare indulgences. Most days were marked by sameness. A bowl in your lap, steam rising faintly, the scent of onion or garlic filling the dark room. You chewed quietly, hoping what nourished you wouldn't harm you. In every bite was both blessing and risk. And so, you gave thanks, softly, sincerely, not just for the meal, but for surviving it. In the medieval village, faith was not a private matter. It was woven into every hour, every breath, every act. Church bells didn't just mark time, they marked duty. The day began with their tolling and often ended under their silent shadow. And in between, you lived beneath the watchful eyes of God and of your neighbors. The church was the center of life, physically, socially, spiritually. It stood tall, made of stone when most homes were wood. Inside, the walls whispered in Latin. You might not understand the priest's words, but you understood the rhythm, the reverence, the expectation to kneel, to listen, to obey. Religion wasn't just comfort, it was control. The local priest knew your name, your sins, your secrets. Confession wasn't always private, and gossip traveled faster than the wind. If you skipped Mass or worked on the Sabbath, someone noticed. And silence spoke volumes. Sins were more than spiritual errors. They were reasons for exclusion, punishment, or even public shame. Adultery, blasphemy, laziness, each came with a cost. You might be fined or flogged or placed in the stocks for others to mock. Faith offered hope, but also fear. Hell was described in vivid detail: fire, worms, torment without end. Children heard these tales before they knew how to read. And still, they prayed, because heaven was beautiful, and heaven was promised, if only you obeyed. Even alone, you were not alone. A carving of a saint watched from the wall. A neighbor passed your window slowly. A crow perched silently on the church roof. Every step you took was measured. Every thought, a possible sin. For women in the Middle Ages, life was a quiet endurance. From the moment of birth, a girl's path was largely predetermined. She would serve, obey, marry, and bear. There were exceptions, but they were rare and often surrounded by scrutiny. Most women never traveled far from the place they were born. Their world was small, but never simple. Girls were taught early how to weave, spin, knead, clean, and care for siblings. Marriage might come as early as 12 or 13, not for love, but for land, lineage, or alliance. Their bodies became tools of continuation, expected to birth children year after year, with little rest and less recognition. Childbirth itself was a dangerous crossing. With no understanding of infection, no anesthesia, and few trained midwives, many women died giving life. Those who survived carried the scars in silence, returning to work within days. Their strength was constant and invisible. Work filled every corner of their day. In the fields beside their husbands, at the loom in candlelight, over the fire where stews simmered and ash settled on skin. Yet their labor was rarely acknowledged. A woman's worth was measured not in coin, but in obedience and quiet sacrifice. Some women pushed boundaries, becoming healers, business owners, even abbesses. But those who stepped too far often faced suspicion, ridicule, or worse. To be loud was to be dangerous. To be independent was to be unnatural. Still, there was resilience in their softness. In lullabies whispered to children, in hands that stitched warmth into worn cloth, in prayers spoken beneath breath while water boiled. Theirs was a strength built not for glory, but for survival. Justice in the Middle Ages wasn't blind. It watched you closely from the eyes of the Lord, the priest, and your neighbors. Law wasn't printed in books most couldn't read. It lived in custom, in punishment, in fear. To break a rule wasn't simply to face consequence. It was to become a lesson for others. For petty theft, you might lose a hand. For slander, your tongue could be pierced. Stocks, pillories, whippings in the square. These were not just punishments, but public spectacles. People gathered not to support, but to stare. Justice was made visible, carved into flesh and memory. Even accusations were dangerous. A whispered rumor could end in a trial, if you were lucky. If not, a mob, a noose, or fire might come first. Truth mattered less than perception, and innocence had little weight once fear took root. Lords ruled their lands with harsh authority. Disputes between peasants might be settled with fines or forced labor. But when a noble accused a commoner, defense was rare. Trial by ordeal, holding hot irons, walking across fire, or being submerged in water, was believed to reveal guilt through divine judgment. If you were burned but healed cleanly, you were innocent. If not, the outcome was sealed. Justice also had its favorites. Men more than women, nobles more than peasants, those who prayed in Latin rather than worked in mud. Yet even the powerful feared scandal. A whispered betrayal could unseat a knight or shame a house. So people walked carefully, spoke softly, and looked away when they had to. In a world like this, silence was often the safest kind of justice one could hope for. Far from the chill of Europe, deep in the jungles of ancient Maya lands, a tomb was found, quiet, sealed, and draped in red. Inside lay a woman, long forgotten, but once revered. Her bones were stained with cinnabar, a sacred red mineral. Her ornaments, exquisite. Her identity, a mystery still whispered by the trees. She would come to be known only as the Red Queen. No name, no inscription, only hints. A royal burial chamber, a palace above, and offerings placed with reverence. Perhaps a queen, a priestess, or the mother of a great king. Whoever she was, her death was not just an end, but a beginning of wonder for those who found her. Her body had lain undisturbed for over 1,000 years. The architecture surrounding her was symbolic. Doorways representing transitions to the underworld, carvings that told stories in glyphs no longer spoken. Every object in the tomb, from jade beads to bone needles, had purpose. Every color, every shape, spoke of belief in life beyond death. The Red Queen reminded the world that power is not always loud. Sometimes it rests quietly beneath stone, waiting to be rediscovered. Though she ruled centuries ago, though her name has vanished, her memory endures, red dust clinging to her bones, as if even the earth itself refused to forget her. The fires have dimmed. The bells have long stopped ringing. Across time, across continents, the stories you've heard settle like dust on an ancient windowsill, soft, quiet, waiting. From the cold stone huts of medieval Europe to the silent tomb of the Red Queen beneath the jungle, the world has always moved on the backs of ordinary people. Peasants and mothers, builders and healers, sinners and saints. Their names may be forgotten, but their lives echo in the simplest things: in the way we wake, eat, work, and dream. Tonight, you walked through narrow alleys and foggy fields. You touched rough tunics, bitter bread, and faith that carried entire villages. You stood in a world of whispered fears and small joys, where survival was a victory and silence was a strength. You learned how the past was not always grand, but real. That kings and queens may have ruled, but it was the hands of many that held history together. And now, as your breath softens and your eyelids grow heavy, let these stories settle around you like a woolen cloak. Let the quiet voices of the past hum gently in your ears. Let the cold stone floors and flickering candles drift into dream. The world you visited tonight has faded into shadow, but it leaves behind a warmth, gentle, deep, and still. Good night, traveler of time. Sleep well.